Hi, this is Bill Varney from Your Saltwater Guide and FishTheSurf.com with your fish report for Thursday, April 17th. So surf fishing continues to be good. It's getting better. It's only going to get better as we make our way through spring and into summer. So let's start up in Santa Barbara. Of course, we get some great information up there from the tackle shop Hook, Line, and Sinker on Las Positas Road. So check them out when you have a chance. So the big news in Santa Barbara this weekend was that the water had turned over earlier in the week last week from some wind and a little rain action that came up there. Really heavy marine layer up in that area, and that all recovered during the week. And that, in addition to the grunion runs that came in there, and although they weren't big runs, the grunion were definitely staging offshore from the Santa Barbara area. It really freed up quite a few stripers to bring them in and feed. There were 3 caught along the Santa Barbara beaches just this last week, and that bite on those striper looks only to get better as time goes on. The hot bait for those has been that 110 Lucky Craft. That seems to work really well in the surf, but really any hard bait is going to work well out there for you. The other thing is that, you know, in a normal winter where we have all this rain, that runoff from the rain really attracts those stripers into feed. We really haven't seen much of that this year, and the striper fishing this winter was a little bit slower than expected. But now that the grunion are in, they're following those grunion in, forget about the rain. They're really going to be blowing up along the beaches all the way from Santa Barbara to San Diego along the California coast. So that's really exciting about those striper. Really good striper fishing this year and continues to be good. When we make our way down to La Conchita, once again, that had been the hot spot for some corbina, but big barred perch continue to be in the count there. Fish 10 to really even 16 inches there on grubs, lugworms, bloodworms. Those kind of baits seem to be working really well at La Conchita. And then Ferrea Beach this week gave up a 33+ inch halibut. That's just a fishing area that is just north of Ventura Overhead, the surf spot. That's a really great place to fish this time of year for halibut because there's a lot of sand in that area, and that is an area where the grunion come in too. So that fish was caught this week on a white 5-inch fluke. Once again, remember, a lot of these baits in the surf for halibut fishing, particularly from Malibu north, that are white, work very well, whether it's a swim bait or a hard bait or a fluke like this, work very well in the surf for halibut. I think they imitate squid, and that's possibly what the halibut are looking for. So we make our way down to Ventura. Ventura remained busy with surf fishing this week. There was exceptional surf fishing along all of the Ventura beaches and into Oxnard for perch. The barred surf perch and walleye surf perch is really spread out in that area as they're looking for food along the beach, and as more and more sand crabs come up, there'll be more and more of these perch. I think we're getting to the end pretty soon of the female spawning, so in another month or so you'll probably catch a lot of smaller perch. This next month is really going to be your final month, would be my guess, for those really big ones in the surf. You might find some big ones over the summer, you know, in between the rocks, near the rock structure where rocks meet sand, but overall these big females will be finished spawning and will be off the beach here in the next month or so. So get on down there and look for those. And then as we continue in Ventura, the walleye surf perch, as I said, is good. And then a really nice halibut was caught down in the Ventura area near the pier on a Lucky Craft bait this week also. So once again, more of those grunion coming in, and they're pulling those halibut in from that deeper water to shallower water, not only to feed, but it is now the beginning of those halibut spawning time. We did get a report this week from Malibu. Good to hear from Malibu. The perch fishing, walleye fishing, cabezon fishing, and calico bass fishing from the rocks there continues to be good, anywhere from Leo Carrillo all the way up to Point Magoo. A lot of different baits are being used for those. We're seeing some lures used in the surf for those, bloodworms, lugworms, strips of squid. All of those things are working there in the surf in Malibu. Remember, a lot of those folks who fish Malibu, it's very rocky in certain areas. You have sand adjacent to rocks, but you have all rocky areas, especially at my Point Magoo. A great way to fish in those areas is by using a floating bobber, and then maybe an 8-foot leader or so below that, depending on how deep you're fishing, to get you over the rocks and over the reef, but not in it so you get snagged. So just keep that in mind when you're down there around rocky areas. The South Bay, Venice Beach has been absolutely on fire. Last year there were some incredible grunion runs there, and this year they continue. And it's almost unbelievable in the sense that of anywhere in Southern California, the water is probably the most turbid and dirty in Venice, and it has some of the biggest grunion runs. So that just shows you how strong, how resilient, how incredible that biomass of grunion really is. So halibut have been biting near the pier there, and then also some very good barred surf perch fishing there with fish to 15, 16 inches there. And I'm talking about handfuls of them in the Venice area have been very good. Walleye, and then there's also been a really good bite on yellowfin croaker. And of course that takes us down to Hermosa and Manhattan Beach, where we didn't have a lot of reports from this week, but we did have a couple reports of good yellowfin croaker fishing and some smaller perch in that area. Didn't hear much about Redondo, Torrance, and down at Rat Beach, but hopefully we'll get some update on that over the next couple of days. And then we make our way down to Orange County. Of course, a great tackle shop there is in Seal Beach at Seal Beach Boulevard and PCH, that's Norm's Bait and Tackle. They have a great selection of bait there. It's a good place to stop for information about surf fishing too in the Orange County area. So down in Orange County, Surfside had a really good bite this week on walleye surf perch, some smaller ones, some smaller bar surf perch. The surf was much smaller there this week, and it made it much more accessible than it was in a previous week where the surf was big. So that continues to get good. The Cliffs had some good fishing. We didn't, at Huntington Beach, we didn't have a lot of reports from Newport Beach because there were some really big south swells that began the week. I think that was some of the first breaks down at the Wedge this week, so that was a little bit slow in that area. And really the big news from Orange County was down in San Onofre, where a 30+ inch striper, and it's an area that's really well known for spot fin croaker. So it's not that we haven't seen striper there, but a lot of times we get reports of spot fin there. This time we got a report of this 30+ inch striper there caught on a hard bait. So that's a really good sign. And I also got a report on Camp Pendleton that a couple stripers were caught that too. So once again, whether it's Santa Barbara or San Diego, those stripers are all along the coast. They've really spread out, and there's got to be quite a few of them if we're catching this many. So Orange County remains good. And then as we work our way down to San Diego probably had more reports than all of the other reports of the other places combined. It was amazing how busy San Diego was this week. So let's start out with just a couple of things. First of all, Carlsbad State Beach has been kicking out numerous big barred surf perch. They've been loving these honey badger grubs. Those have worked really well down in the surf down there. Torrey Pines, lots of perch down there, barred surf perch. I've got anglers sending me reports catching 10, 15, 20 in one session down there, so that remains really good. Down on the Silver Strand, a 5-inch honey badger bait caught a 25-inch halibut down there, and there's no question in that Silver Strand area that a lot of that has to do with these grunion runs that are coming in, because all around that whole area there have been grunion. So that's a really good sign. We'll continue to see that, and we're even seeing some good bite on halibut in areas like South Carlsbad State Beach, where there's a lot of rocks on shore, but offshore it's mostly sand, but it's mixed in with rocks. Anglers using hard baits in those areas and making lots of casts are also finding halibut right down in that area. And then as we continue into San Diego, you know, San Diego Harbor has been kicking out tons of juvenile-sized barracuda. Such a good sign. And then the other thing is that there's been quite a few schools of bonita found and seen inside the San Diego Harbor. I think a lot of that, San Diego Bay, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's not only grunion on the outside of San Diego Bay, but there's grunion on the inside of the bay. And in addition to that, both in San Diego Harbor and in King Harbor, there's been huge numbers of anchovy, sardine, and grunion in the back of those harbors swimming around. And of course, when that stuff is inside the harbor, you know, there's a lot outside the harbor, and all of that is bringing fish around the harbor areas, around the beaches in those harbors, and of course inside the bays and harbors themselves. So that remains really, really good. We're really excited about that, and that's going to lend to some excellent spring surf fishing and bay fishing too. One thing I want everybody to remember is that if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, it's on the front page of fishthesurf.com. Just put your email address in there every month. I don't spam you or anything. You'll get one email once a month for the newsletter, and it will give you an overview of all the conditions, what's coming up for that month, a fish report from Santa Barbara to San Diego. It covers everything you need to know about surf fishing. The other thing is to remember is that our Bolsa Chica clinic, easy for me to say, July 26th, Saturday, July 26th, has about 4 or 5 spots in it, almost completely full now. If you'd like to sign up, now is the time to jump on there. You want to go to surffishtackle.com. You can sign up right there for it. It's a great way to get down to the beach and learn about surf fishing right on the sand. We provide all the bait, some snacks in the morning for you, and then also all the instruction right on the sand. So not only will we be fishing and catching fish, but you'll be able to ask all of us exactly, what am I looking for? How do I bait my hook? What kind of rig do I use? All that information we teach you right on the beach. It's excellent. And then last but not least, our next upcoming Grunion run will be at the end of this month, 4/27, 28, 4/29, 4/30. I think that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Normally, remember, the Grunion run is really generally best on the second day. And then this period of time is a no-take period. You can't go down there and collect any. You can only observe now. That will stay in effect until after July 1st. In other words, the run that comes after July 1st, you'll be able to collect them again. Unfortunately, when we get to July and August, these Grunion runs have really petered out because so many of the Grunion have already come in and spawned, but that's what we have to deal with at this time. So thank you everybody for watching. Y'all see you right here next week, and until then, good luck on the sand.